Monitoring quality and quantity of code switching. Now, it is important for the teachers to monitor both the quality of the code switching, that is, what exactly are they code switching into, what are the linguistic items they are code switching into, and also the quantity of code switching, that is, the extent to which they allow another language to enter their teaching of the subject. Now, if we have too much code switching, research says that this might delay the learning of an additional language. So we have our public school system, for instance, where the learners have a huge issue in the learning of English language because the code switching is done at such an extent that the new language is hardly ever used except when the reference is made to it in terms of the textbook. So that can hamper the use of the language because the classroom is the space. Please remember that gives the learners a sort of an area where they can practice the use of the new language. This practice of the new use of the language might be in the learning of the language itself, but it might also be the learning of the new language when they are talking about the subject content. So when the teachers are using a specific language to explain a subject, they are also providing them model structures of how to talk about that subject. And if there is too much code switching, then it becomes difficult for the learners to get the benefit from that type of instruction. The other problem is that if too much code switching is used, then there might occur what we call an over-reliance on one language. For instance, if you are teaching for social studies, for example, or mathematics, for example, in one subject, that is English language, and you're constantly code switching in Urdu language, then your reliance on Urdu language might increase to the extent that to understand the textbook, you're constantly depending on the translation. You're constantly thinking about knowing the codes, the linguistic codes, in the language that you are more comfortable in, rather than engaging yourself or taking up the challenge of trying to understand the textbook in the given language. Then, of course, there can also be confusion in terms of certain constructs that are used in the textbooks. Take, for example, the instance of this word tables in mathematics, and the Urdu version of it is, for instance, pahade. Now, if the teacher is constantly using pahade at times and tables at times, it might confuse the learners regarding the concept itself, or what does it entail, and specifically more because if the term used in the textbook is different and the term that the teacher is using is different. More often than not, please remember, we have large classrooms where these misunderstandings can clearly emerge because they can either not ask questions, or there is very little time for the discussion of this cross-linguistic awareness. So it might lead to this confusion of the constructs. And then if there is too much code switching, the learners, as we discussed, might not get or learn the academic codes of the subject that they need to talk about either in the examination or in their further careers. So then it means that when you're over-relying on the language that you know, and you're not using the majority language or the dominant language that you need to know, then it may undermine the purpose of gaining bilingual education itself. When there is too little of code switching, that the teachers are hardly using code switching at all, then it can be disengaging. The students, if they don't understand the language, can become alienated. And again, this also defeats the purpose of bilingual education. So that what we are saying is that one needs to think responsibly about when and why we would code switch in the classrooms.